Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here, and I thought to mark the release of Coco in UK cinemas, now would be the perfect opportunity to give you my rundown of the top 10 best Pixar movies. I'm a massive fan of Pixar. I've loved pretty much everything they've done, except for, the obvious exception of like the Cars sequels. Some films they've done haven't been that great, but for the most part, every film Pixar's put out has been absolutely fantastic. They're one of my favourite probably movie studios working today. They put out so many amazing films, and I thought now that Coco has eventually finally been released in UK cinemas, now would be a really great opportunity to give you my rundown of the top 10 best Pixar movies. Obviously there's a lot of great Pixar films, there's a lot that aren't going to be on this list, but for the most part, the 10 that are on my list are my 10 favourites. There are some that I do like that didn't make it onto the list, but they just weren't quite good enough to get a place on the top 10. So all that said, let's get this started now with my top 10 best Pixar movies. Now coming in at number 10, I've got Up, and this might be a surprise to a lot of you. A lot of people I think would have Up a lot higher on their list, but even though it's at number 10, I think it says a lot that it even makes a list, because like I said, there are so many great Pixar movies, there's so many great ones that didn't make the list, so the fact that it even is only at number 10 still speaks to how great this film is, that it managed to get a spot on my list. I don't love Up as much as a lot of people do, but I do think it is really great. Now, obviously, I'd agree with how amazing those opening 10 minutes are. I don't love the whole film as much as, say, like the opening 10 minutes. I think it is a little meandering. I'm not as big a fan of the story with Up as I am as some of the other Pixar movies, but I do think it is a really great Pixar film. Obviously it is very emotional, obviously it does sweep you away on this grand adventure that you're really kind of swept up in with these characters, and yeah, I do really like Up. Not one of my top favourites, but it still had to make my top 10, so Up comes in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, I've got Finding Nemo. Again, this might be a lot higher on a lot of people's lists, and I do really like Finding Nemo. Just because I've got Finding Nemo and Up towards the bottom of the list doesn't mean I don't like them. It's just that there's so many other Pixar movies I like even more. And like I said with Up, the fact that it just makes the list alone speaks to how good this film is. And yeah, what it says to say about Finding Nemo that hasn't been said already, it is one of those great Pixar films that, 10 and 15 years later, however long it's been, still holds up. You can still go back and rewatch it. I really enjoy this film. I think it's really great, how we got Nemo's dad and Dory teaming up there to find Nemo. But I actually did really like Finding Dory as well. That's one I really wasn't expecting to enjoy, but that was actually really great. So, didn't make the list, but I really like Finding Dory as well. And yeah, Finding Nemo, not much else to say about it here. One of the best Pixar movies. Had to make the list. Now coming in at number 8, I've got Monsters Inc. And out of all the early Pixar movies, or the early 2000s, mid-2000s Pixar movies, this is probably one of my favourites. I really like this movie. I've gone back and rewatched this from time to time, and I'm always surprised at how great it is and how much it still holds up. We get to see, the world of the monsters, and it's just a really cool concept, really cool ideas there. And it's one of the things I like most about Pixar movies, is that they have really great ideas to them, really great kind of central kind of concepts and premises. And the same can definitely be applied to Monsters Inc. You've got this, this company of monsters that are in the business of scaring little kids, coming out from the closet under the bed. And it's just a really cool concept, but more than that, it's a really great story as well. And the relationship between Sully and Boo, every time I rewatch this movie, I'm surprised at how emotional it is. And I probably prefer this a lot more than I do Finding Nemo and Up. Maybe you can make the argument that there are better films, maybe, but for me, I prefer Monsters Inc. I really enjoyed this movie. I remember I had the game on PlayStation back in the day, and yeah, I just love the whole concept, the central premise and all the ideas that explored here, the story with them having this relationship with this little girl. It actually gets surprisingly kind of emotionally investing as the movie progresses, and yeah, I actually really enjoy Monsters Inc. So there we go, Monsters Inc. at number 8. Coming in at number 7, I've got Coco. That's right, the latest one. And I was expecting Coco to be good. Everyone's been raving about it. Everyone's been talking about how it's one of the best Pixar movies we've ever had. But I was like, is it though? Is it that good? But after I saw it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, it was a really great film overall. Really emotionally impactful, especially to me. I was really struggling to hold myself together. And again, the whole thing with the story and the characters of Miguel, his relationship with his family, and what really hit me and what I really loved about this film was that at its core it was about family, and it was about dealing with loss and the afterlife and these big kind of heavy themes, really, that was quite dark for a kids movie, and it went to places that I didn't think it was going to, and it also went in directions story-wise that I did not think it was going to go to either. Like, I thought I'd sussed this film out before I'd seen it. I thought I knew what was going to happen. I thought I knew what I was going to get. But no, it really took me by surprise, and it really went in directions that I wasn't expecting it to go in. And some things happened that really shocked me and took me by surprise, especially as we got into that second half and, into the third act. And that's what I like most about this film. It was really impactful, really emotional, but it also went in directions I didn't expect it to go in. It took me by surprise, and I actually had a really great time with Coco, and I actually think it's one of the best films Pixar has put out thus far. Coming in at number 6, just edging out Coco for me, is Wally. Now, I absolutely love Wally. It's, I remember watching it back when it came out in the cinema, and I just fell in love with it from the moment I saw it. For me, if it's between like Wally and Up and Finding Nemo and all these kind of classic, kind of golden age almost Pixar films, for me it's Wally, hands down. I absolutely love this movie, and obviously there's sci-fi elements and robots and space, and so maybe I've got a soft spot for it because of that. But not only that, it's a beautifully crafted, really well told story, about this robot called Wally and his relationship with Eve. It's amazing when you think about it how much of this film works from just no dialogue, really. And when you rewatch it, you realise how much of it actually takes place with Wally on Earth before we even get to the spaceship and space and all of that with the humans. And when a film can put across, characters and emotion and relationships and story that well without hardly any dialogue, just through visual storytelling means, that's when you realise how great of a film it really is. And even when we do get to the spaceship with the humans, there's still not a whole lot of dialogue, and the humans are really supporting characters in the background. It's still Wally and his film, and it's not only about kind of saving the world, but it's also about the relationship between Wally and Eve, and it's almost like a love story between two robots, and it just sounds bizarre, it sounds like it wouldn't work, but it's just so beautifully done, it's so well told, really well crafted, and you just fall in love with this film, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite Pixar movies, so just missing out in the top 5 there, I've got Wally. Coming in at number 5, it's of course the original, the one that started it all. It's the classic Toy Story from 1995. I had to put Toy Story in there at the top 5 just because of how groundbreaking and revolutionary a film this is. It's the first, not only the first Pixar film, but the first fully CG animated film we've ever got. And now it does look a little dated, I suppose, now, because it doesn't look as good as, say, Toy Story 2 and especially Toy Story 3, where, the animation and technology was a lot more advanced by that point. But it still holds up as a film. The first one is still absolutely fantastic, and I can totally understand why the first one would be anyone's favourite. They're all absolutely amazing. We got Woody there, introduced to Woody, and how they introduced Buzz in that first film, and how it was about the relationship between Woody and Buzz, and Woody being a little bit jealous and annoyed with Buzz being the new flashy toy, him trying to get rid of Buzz, and then him trying to, get Buzz back. What's so great about the Toy Story films in particular is that they're really great as far as, the dynamics between the characters and the relationships between the characters. They're really great, like, character dramas, even though they're films about CG animated toys. It's kind of absurd, but they're some of, like, the best films, period. All 3 of the Toy Story films. I don't love the first one as much as I do the other 2, but it's still a really great film that really holds up all these years later, and the very first Pixar film, the very first CG animated film, and it just had to make my list. So coming in at number 5, it's the original Toy Story. And just edging out Toy Story for me is one of the more recent Pixar films, and that is Inside Out. Now, if you watch my best films of 2015 that I did, Inside Out was my number 1 favourite film of 2015. And I absolutely love this film. It's one of the Pixar films that really hits me from an emotional standpoint. I can really connect with and relate to the characters, and obviously it's dealing with big universal themes like emotions and joy and sadness and all these things, but it's just done so well. It just opens your eyes to something you've never seen before, looking inside the mind of a person and having these lead characters essentially who are emotions with joy and sadness and fear and anger and disgust. And it's such a great story as well, where we're seeing, the arc and the journey that joy and sadness go on, and how it ends up with them realising that you can't have one without the other, you have to have both. And it just really touches you, it really hits you. There's so many moments in this film that I'm almost like breaking down in tears. I just think this is one of the best Pixar films, and maybe, who knows, in time, in years to come, it might even rise higher on my list. As of right now, it cracks the top 5, and number 4 is Inside Out. And coming in at number 3, this one just edges out Inside Out for me, because I just remember loving it so much as a kid, having it on video, watching it over and over again, and that is Toy Story 2. Man, I love this film. And I always forget how much I love this film. Actually, funnily enough, a few years back, we watched it in university. I was doing like a popular cinema module, and we watched Toy Story 2, because we were doing like animation and that kind of thing. I think I hadn't seen it in quite a few years. And then we watched it, and I was like, I completely forgot how great it was and how funny it was. It's so hilarious. It might be the funniest of the Toy Story films, and the funniest Pixar film maybe. It's just a really great comedy adventure. And another thing I like about the Toy Story films as well is that they're all kind of different genres. It's much bigger scale than the first one. Obviously the first one was a lot smaller scale, but the second one, they open it up and it's a much bigger world. It's a much larger scale adventure with the toys going out to try and find and rescue Woody, and it's a much bigger world that they can explore and go on this adventure to try and find Woody. But like I said, it's just so funny. The writing is just so whip smart. It's so sharply written. Really great writing, especially for like a kids film. That's what's so great about Pixar films. I don't treat them as just dumb films for kids. They're great films for anyone who's any age. And again, it's a film that is both kind of sharply funny but genuinely moving at the same time. It really hits you, and I just love this film. It's one of my favourite films as a kid. Like I said, I remember having it on video, just watching it over and over again. And yeah, there's not much else to say about Toy Story 2 here, other than I think it's amazing. I think it's one of the best Pixar films we've ever had. And I'm really splitting hairs here with the top 5 especially. But there we go, Toy Story 2 coming in at number 3. And coming in at number 2, I've got Toy Story 3. That's right. I mean, this could have easily have been number 1. But Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 could easily have been the other way around. I just love them both, but like with Toy Story 2, I've watched Toy Story 3 many times over the years as well, and every time I go back and watch Toy Story 3, I'm just genuinely awestruck at how great it is. Now, I loved it from the very first moment I saw it, but every time I go back and rewatch it, I like it even more, and I'm really taken aback at how great a film it really is. And whereas the Toy Story 2 is like a comedy adventure film, Toy Story 3 is almost like a prison drama. Sounds insane, but it kind of is, where they're stuck in this prison of the kind of the daycare kind of centre, and they're trying to get out there, and it's just so great because it almost works better for adults, I would argue, than it does kids. Because I remember seeing this back in the cinema when it came out in 2010 or whatever it was, and some of the kids were like, they weren't really kind of in the film. I was sitting behind just so like emotionally affected by what the characters were saying, and it was just going over the heads of these little kids in front of me, and I was like, they kind of do appeal more to adults and resonate more with adults than they do with kids. I mean, they are great kids movies as well, but they really hit you, especially when you get older as well. Some of the themes they're dealing with, it's just so great, and it's just so powerful, and it's so touching, and it really hits you. I mean, the same can be said for every Pixar movie, but especially with Toy Story 3, and especially with that ending. Oh my god, no matter how many times I watch it, that ending never fails to just break me down in tears. And every time I watch it, I think I'm not going to cry, and then every time I watch it, I'm just struggling to hold back the tears. It just hits me so much. Everything from when they're about to be incinerated to when Andy's giving them away towards the end of the film. God, it just wrecks me, and it's just so great as well, story-wise, where it's like a 10-year jump from Toy Story 2, and me being like a similar kind of age to Andy, I was like kind of growing up with these films, so I loved the first one and the second one when I was a kid, and then, 10 years later, or however it is, getting ready to go off to college or what have you, being able to really relate to Andy and everything that's explored in the third Toy Story film as well. I just love this film, one of the best Pixar films. It could so easily have been number 1, but there's just one other film that is not only, I think, my favourite Pixar film, but it's one of my favourite films of all time. So, before we get there, number 2 is Toy Story 3. And coming in at number 1, you probably guessed what it is by now, but it is The Incredibles. This probably isn't much of a surprise, because I'm a big fan of superhero movies, but that being said, this isn't just a great superhero movie. I think it's the best superhero movie of all time. There, I said it. Live action, animated or otherwise, I think it is just absolutely fantastic. And like Toy Story 2, this is a film that when it first came out, I was just absolutely obsessed. I remember having it on DVD and just watching it over and over and over and over again. I was absolutely obsessed the first kind of year or two when it came out, and I just remember wearing that disc out. And for me, I think it's the best Pixar movie because it's not only a fantastic Pixar film, but it's also, for me, one of the best films ever made. It's in my top 10, top 5 favourite films of all time. I think it is just so great. I think it is flawless. There's not one little thing that I don't like about this film. I'm just love every fibre of The Incredibles, and I cannot wait for The Incredibles 2. Finally, all these years later, we're finally getting an Incredibles 2. What has it been? 15 years? I remember when the first one came out. There's going to be some kids seeing this one that weren't even born when the first one came out, probably. I've been waiting so long. I remember being back in secondary school and actually writing a letter to Pixar and Brad Bird, please do The Incredibles 2, and I had some ideas for, what the story could be. And funny enough, my ideas were a 10-15 year jump, which is actually what they did in Toy Story 3. And I wrote that before Toy Story 3 came out. But anyway, yeah, I just love The Incredibles. Again, the relationships between the characters, the whole family dynamic there, it really is the best Fantastic Four movie that isn't a Fantastic Four movie. The family dynamics there between all the characters, it really resonates with you as a kid, and also now as an adult. I love the film still just as much. It's one of those films that I loved when I was younger, but all these years later I still love it just as much, maybe even more so, because I really appreciate how fantastic of a film it is. I always thought it was a great film, and that's one of the reasons why I loved it and watched it over and over again, but now I can really appreciate how great it is, and I just love this film. Now, I'm probably just going to wind down here because I'm just going on and on and on about how much I love this movie. But yeah, a really fantastic Pixar movie. For me, it is the #1 best Pixar film. I cannot wait to see The Incredibles 2. I really hope it delivers. Brad Bird's coming back there, so I've got hope, I've got faith. But there we go. Incredibles, my #1 favourite Pixar movie. And there we have it. That wraps up my top 10 best Pixar films. What is your list? What are your favourite Pixar movies? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. And if you missed my last review, be sure to go ahead and click over here to catch up on my last review, or perhaps down here to catch up on one of my recent videos. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.